Hello, Something Guys and Gals, this is Something Guy 912. It's been a hot minute since I've covered a THPS map, what with me wanting to put this aside in favor of some Half-Life 2 art architecture vids, the Tales from the Borderlands project, and my recent completion of the Fight for Sanctuary analysis. But now, with big projects out of the way, for now, I can once again get back to some skateboarding maps. Following up from school is of course the Mall, which is one of many maps that allude to the initial idea behind Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, as they had wanted to capitalize on the downward jam style of games like SSX, where you go from one linear side of the course to the other, before they opted for the more free-flow nature of the maps. Regardless of that, we are nevertheless here to discuss the actual map design and how realistic it is, so without further ado, let's do that. Alright, and now we are properly in game, and to keep, as a reminder, the camera for this game is a little bit sluggish in terms of allowing me to free move as well as I could in Garry's Mod, so just to make a little commentary about the nature of this map, I do find it funny how prophetic, like, this mall map was when they made the game back in, like, 1999, considering the overall decline of malls in America. And the original map obviously tried to make allusions to it, like the foreclosure signs on the windows, but that was about the best they could do with that illusion, whereas this, it kind of goes full in on the nature of this being a abandoned mall. So with that in mind, we will discuss aspects of the mall. So the first thing is the opening section where you crash in through these doors. Now, there's nothing wrong with the doors or the garage, it's just mainly their proximity. They're just really close to each other because, like, the example I gave was, like, imagine if a car, like, lost its brakes and just rolled down this incline, it would basically crash right into this mall here. And usually malls that I've gone to usually have the entrances in smaller places, or usually in such a way that a car couldn't just freely, like, drive into it. Somebody would deliberately have to go out of their way to crash into a mall like this with their car. So moving on, we go up to this little ramp here. Now, this is going to be a prevalent thing throughout this map, is a lot of the ramps on this map are unusually wide for what are supposed to be ramps for the mall. Because you have two sets of what seems to be escalators, obviously not functioning, and then in the middle is a set of stairs, which is also very odd because usually stairs and escalators are separate from each other, and normally the width of them are about like 1 or 2 people at most. They wouldn't be this wide, so it kind of makes me wonder if this mall like really thought that it needed these ramps this wide to accommodate so many people, but who knows. Obviously, it's just a concession for the sake of gameplay. We move up a little ways and we come across what is basically the directory, and basically kind of gives you an idea of what the entire map is going to comprise of. Now, because this map is serpentine, this directory is not exactly helpful because normally when it comes to malls you can be lost as in terms of like your sense of direction as well as what floor you're on. But this mall basically only has one major floor, even if some parts are slightly upraised over other portions of the mall itself. So this directory would only help you in terms of finding the specific goods or services you're looking for in that mall, as opposed to just not getting lost in general. So that's a funny thing. And then we will move on. We come across this extremely elaborate structure that is basically copy-paste on the other side here. And in the middle of it is basically an art structure. At least I think it's supposed to be an art structure because there doesn't seem to be a practical reason for this to be here, other than just to look pretty or avant-garde and whatnot. But as for these ramps, I don't know what they would have served, because you see like small parts of rubble to suggest that this was like comprising an upper balcony or floor area here, but there's not like broken off pieces of this upper part of the mall wing to suggest that, so I don't know where this came from. And obviously this is elaborately constructed by skaters to make it seem as though like to comprise it as a ramp. But as to what the architecture originally served, I couldn't tell you, especially with the other side as well. And there's going to be more problems with this being made this particular way. As for example, we come across this small section of a directory that's seemingly on a dead end, because you have the ramp here, you go up it and go back here to this portion of the directory, and it just ends. Like, you see these portions of the wing that are blocked off by fence and cardboard, but the architecture itself doesn't seem to imply like bridges. So there's literally just a ramp that goes to a directory dead end and then some flora. Like, there's no practical reason for this to be designed this way. And like I said, there's no architecture to suggest that it would continue on. So basically, if you want to get to these sides of the wings, you basically have to beeline all the way back there and then go back to get to, like, if you want to go to the Salas service or whatever. And then going back below, we come across to the side here with this ramp and a car. And I do think there's some poetic irony with this ramp comprising a sign that says buy anything and get the chance to win a car, and then, you know, complimenting it is a destroyed car here. Now, I don't know how the car got here, but maybe it was just placed here, or maybe that was the car that you could win being used as a trick spot, but that would be the only way that would make any sense. And then obviously right above it, we have a set of grind bars that make no sense and are just purely there for the sake of grinding on it. There's no practical reason for that to be here. Then we move on. Then we can also look back behind us, and we can kind of see the oddly elaborate setup of these side ramps and upraised sections this way. And obviously this is, you know, a concession for the sake of the original map, but obviously it kind of puts into attention the oddity of this being designed this way. But, you know, maybe they made the mall an art piece in of itself. But something that is a little bit peculiar is on the bottom of this we have a door to parking. So there is supposedly more parking that is beneath the mall than the parking garages that we came across in the opening of this map. And that's going to cause more problems with the overall scale and elevation of this map in general. And then we move to the side over here. It's like this small little atrium section that you can do some tricks off on. And it's really nice, of course, but there's problems. Like, we have more of these little wings and upraised balconies, and there does not seem to be any way to get here, real or implied. There's no, like, for example, if I go to this side and then scroll on through, clearly there's no pathway to get here, to get to this other side, based on the geometry. So this is seemingly a dead end. And it's just kind of weird that this is kind of like off on a nuke this way. And then we'll go back to the path at hand. We have a small little greenery here with these two giant bars. And obviously this was in the original map, but again, I don't know what these bars served. And not to mention the fact that with this being kind of a greenery, it kind of makes me wonder if the lighting and structures above it were made to kind of like as a sprinkler system. And if that was the case, then it makes me wonder if there should be barriers around this area to keep people from getting sprayed or fall into into the floor that's wet. Because you have these small little bar things. I think they're supposed to be sprinkler systems, but I don't know. Anyhow, we will move on. We come across this little section to the left with another directory and a ramp here. Now, obviously, the directory being here and this ramp would basically make it inaccessible for people to walk over. But obviously this ramp was a creation of the skaters that came in and just put this here. But even if this wasn't here, this directory is oddly getting away of the flow of traffic that would be coming in through these two sides of the wing. Like, wouldn't it make more sense for this to be here as opposed to here? and I believe the directories were one of the objectives for the mall section, so that's probably why that's there, to kind of direct the player to go to here as opposed to going to the ramp, unless you're just trying to make their high score challenge on this map. But obviously, practical reasons, it probably make more sense for it to be here. Anyhow, we move on to this lower section with kind of some moody lighting going on. And now this area is a little bit padded with boards and whatnot, and again, some of these boards were clearly put here after the fact. They weren't here originally, like these sections here, as they're blocking this cage for one of the stores, I guess you would say. I don't know what you would call those individual little cubbies or whatnot, but I guess you would call them stores. But what I do find interesting is with this like being split off this way originally, it does cause some weird flow of traffic to be kind of diverted in this way. I don't know why it would be like split up in this manner. Like usually mall halls are usually very open with small structures rather than wide structures like this. And we will continue on through the weird menagerie of TV screens and cardboard cutouts. We come across another directory. Again, same deal as before. And behind it, we have this arch structure, and above it is broken rubble. But this broken rubble, I almost thought it was like symmetrical, which would have caused even more problems. But we have like broken pieces of like cobblestone, rebar, and metal, but below it does not seem to have any of that like residue of that broken cobblestone and rubble below it. Even though with this you would think there would be some, but clearly there isn't. So that was kind of an oversight, and just they're kind of just for the style points, I guess. And then we move on. We are nearing the end of this map. We come across the food court section, which is massively different from how it was originally. Oh, for a moment I thought it was real people, like Jesus. And obviously this section is massively modified, as you can tell. Like these trapezoid structures, some of the quarter pipes were clearly put here by skaters. But even with that in mind, there are still some problems with this map in general. Like, for example, we have these like little canopy sections, which I'm assuming are used for people to just, you know, eat under. But obviously, the way that they're angled, they're way too low. Like, some people would be hitting their heads, like, trying to stand up around these, by accident, too, no less. And like with the atrium section, going up here reveals that there's seemingly no way to get up here either. At least not assumed, because most of these are just comprised of more closed storefronts this way. So we shall move on. I think that's the last directory we come across. And we have this weird section where clearly the rubble has collapsed down to where it would normally come up here. But the problem then becomes is how would somebody normally get down to this side of this portion of the mall? Like, my guess is maybe this wasn't just a full-on ramp that covered this area. Maybe parts of it were a ramp and other parts were ways to get down, but yeah, this broken part doesn't really add up. And you can even see that, like, maybe this is all supposed to be one ramp that goes up, which causes more confusion as to how somebody would get down in this section. And more to the point of that, if this is supposed to be an upraised section, then it causes questions as to why this area does not have a barrier for people to not accidentally fall over into the lower portion of this opening of the mall. And then we come across this last little section of stairs and into the exit of the mall, or in a certain way you could consider it an entrance, because if some unlucky sod decided to park here and enter this mall, they're going to have a nice little workout because of all the inclines that get down here. And then more to the point, because of all those declines and the way that we went down on this mall, means that this area is much farther away and much lower than where the parking garages would be on this map. And you can kind of even see it when we go out of bounds. Like, let's see if I can get a little bit closer. It's a little far away, but yeah, you can see just how high up that section is, and like out in the distance, that's basically where the parking garages are in terms of their height compared to the outside section of this mall. And then with that, that is it for the mall map of THPS 1 and 2. And that was that for that map. As for future odd architecture maps going forward, I do want to cover the next batch of Half-Life 2 maps, as only 2 comprise the Black Mesa East chapter of that map. But afterward, Wednesday Season 2 will be taking up most of my attention for the foreseeable future. Hope you enjoyed this as a hors d'oeuvre to the THPS maps I've covered, and a playlist for them is now available.